All right, everyone, let's get into it. Matt here with Down Once More. This week we are talking Season 2, Episode 2, Through the Valley of HBO's The Last of Us, the adaptation of the PlayStation game series of the same name. Calling out there will be spoilers for Episode 2 of the show in here, as well as what's come before on the show. Obviously, towards the end, I will talk a little bit of spoilers from the future of the game. So if you haven't played the games yet, skip that part. Check out time codes below. That'll be at the very end of the episode. I highly recommend skipping that if you haven't played the games. I wait to experience these moments in the show. Now, just want to call out that can sometimes bite you in the ass, like this week's episode. If you didn't know what was coming, I cannot imagine what you're feeling right now. Go to the comments on YouTube, DM me on Instagram, let me know what you're thinking right now, because I know how I'm feeling, and I knew what was coming on this week's episode. Well, I didn't know for sure it was going to be this week, but I did call it at the end of last week's episode that I felt like that was going to be happening this week. So, I after the episode ended, I just kind of sat there with it for a minute, because it hit me harder than I was expecting when I knew what was coming, and they followed the game so closely in that regard, and it still sucked. I sat there for a couple minutes, went upstairs, grabbed my water before coming down here to record, and went upstairs. My wife, who does not watch the show with me because I'm smart and know episodes like tonight, she would kill me for putting her through that, asked me how it was, and I just said it was heavy, and then kind of struggled. She asked me what happened, and I could not get into it. I getting choked up, which sounds lame. This is a safe space. If I cry on this week's episode, you should too. Otherwise, you have no heart or soul. But we're gonna just cut to the chase, because your spoilers, you've seen the episode. Pedro Pascal's Joel Miller is dead. And the current timeline, we are done with Joel's story. It sucks. People played the games. We've known this is coming for a long time. From lingering at the end of the finale on the shot of, we now know, Abby's dad, the doctor, dead after Joel killed him, just laying on the floor. The close-up that lingered in the end of the finale of season 1. Those who played the game knew what that meant and knew what we were in store for this season. There were rumors. I was kind of annoyed. IGN put out an article after the episode last week, said, "Will Joel die in season 2 of The Last of Us?" Which is just a dick move. I get your clickbait headlines, but people who haven't played the games, you're spoiling it ahead of time. And the show fans are going to be different from the game fans. Let people fucking experience it. I usually try not to swear until like 5+ minutes into the episode, because I think it fucks up the YouTube algorithm, but we're getting into it. I'm dead inside tonight. So Joel is dead. It was taken pretty much just as it was in the games. One difference is we got to see Caitlin Dever as Abby, a little bit more dialogue with Joel, going to make him reflect on what he's done and why she's doing this, until we get into some of the stuff from the game where Joel just tells her to do it already, and Abby tells him he calls him a stupid old man and says he doesn't get to rush this. Just dialogue straight from the game before she just starts fucking brutally beating him. I feel like we held on that longer. I can't even look at the camera as I'm recording. We held on that longer in the show than we did in the game, and hearing Joel's screams, and it was fucking brutal. And haven't played the game, a key difference. And then I'm going to go back to the beginning of the episode some. If this is the first one you've watched of these, I don't do a full breakdown, like a full recap of the episode, talk key highlights, things that stood out, some of the differences from the game, some of the things that really made an impact on me in this week's episode, and so on and so forth. So, Joel's death, obviously the biggest thing in this episode, so that's what I'm focusing on first. One of the changes in it, besides Abby's great dialogue and just monologue is the word I was looking for, at Joel, just almost like a rehearsed speech, but just with so much emotion and anger and hatred for it. And as Craig Mazin kind of said in the behind thing, he said it's a kind of righteous hate, or actually Neil Druckmann, I think, was the one who said it. He said they wanted to get that righteous hate in the game, and you do it both for Abby, and we see it a lot earlier in the show than we do in the games. We don't get the backstory of Abby, why she did it, about that the doctor was her dad, until about halfway through the game, and we're getting it right up front here, so you know what she's doing, why she's doing it, because part of the mystery that you're uncovering in the games playing as Ellie is, why did this happen? Why did they come to take Joel out? What did Joel do to them? And obviously that was spoiled. We talked about it at last week's recap, that I didn't necessarily love that we're giving that away right off the bat. But seeing how this week's episode played out and that we're getting to that point and that conflict so early, I do think it makes a little more sense. Now, granted, both Ellie and Dina was passed out during it because Mel gave her an injection to make her pass out. They were not there or not conscious when we found out why exactly they were doing it to Joel. So there will still be that mission, but us as audience members kind of understand a little bit more. Abby still could be hatred. There's still going to be hatred for Abby. Hopefully Caitlin Deaver's not very active on social media, because I can just imagine just how vile her DMs are going to be, because people suck. And she is an actress who I was hesitant when she was cast in the role, but I think the emotion, how she delivered that monologue and that whole scene at the end of this episode played out. Absolutely great casting, and she did do a good job with that. One thing that I thought made it even more raw and brutal was the manner. So in the game, Joel is the final blow when Owen tells Abby to just finish it after Ellie comes in, gashes Manny in the face with her knife, and they have her pinned down, so she's watching this final moment after Joel's just looking just so mangled and beaten to a pulp. We've seen Abby just fucking wailing on him. In the game, she still has that golf club, and she kills him with that. She just basically bashes his brains in. And in this, you see the golf club is broken, because she is just so brutally beaten him with it. It snapped the golf club, and she just stabs it into his neck to kill him. And that was, to me, that was almost so much more visceral and brutal, because it shown the beating that she had already given him and that pain and torture she had inflicted on him, because she told us she was going to do it at the beginning of last week's episode. She said, when we kill him as slow. And so it does set up the conflict that is to come. I will be curious to see where it goes from here, if there's still some intermixing and cutting between Abby's story and Ellie's, but we will see in the future episodes. But let's go back. I'm not going to spend too much time because partially because I feel emotionally drained after just watching that episode, that talking about it sounds brutal. But a couple key things in this episode, next to Joel and Abby and that whole interaction and confrontation a bit that happens, is the other main thing is Jackson is breached and infected by infected. Breached and infected? Breached and attacked by infected. This is something that doesn't take place in the games on screen. Neil Druckmann at the end of the episode calls, he's like, in the game, we talk about how Jackson had been under attack before. I guess, and they talked about how they want to make it where everyone was in danger. Everyone was in a state of peril, and the tension is cranked up to 11 in this week's episode. And I'll be honest, for me, that whole piece of it was something that I think playing the game actually took away from my enjoyment of the show. Because knowing what we were about to get to with Abby and Joel, in that tension and everything going on there, pulling us out of that to this all-out action, massive scene in Jackson just being attacked by the infected and what they're going through, I didn't need. It was distracting. It felt too busy for me for the drama and everything that The Last of Us has shown itself to be, if that makes sense. This was a full-out action movie set piece, the attack on Jackson. That's not something that we've really broached in this show before. The show has been very much about the people, the relationships, the real human emotions, rage, anger, hope, hopelessness, love. That's what's at the core of this show. And this, by putting this very action-heavy scene in there, yes, it does still pull in those emotions, the feelings of like hopelessness you see and fear of the people of Jackson when the city gets breached and the bloaters coming at them, and almost all the other flamethrower guys besides Tommy are running away from it just because they're scared and it feels overwhelming, and that hopelessness and the fear of loss, and then the love between Maria and Tommy trying to distract the bloater to save Maria, and then just the fear of the people of Jackson huddling underneath there, but then the resilience of everyone to fight back and fight off the infected and still protect their town, showing the trials that they've gone through, that everything's not just idyllic there. I get why you wanted to portray that. I get why you want to put that heightened sense of panic and fear. Like I said, it took away from the core and the heart elements for me. For me, with the story from the games, and the connection to these characters, it made it more about the action and the infected than the people in that moment. For me, that's just a preference thing. I thought it was still like, I don't know. Those are just my thoughts. And it was set up at the beginning with Jesse talking about this new thing where infected are using piles of frozen, dead infected to kind of keep themselves warm, insulate them underneath the snow so they could attack. Okay, we're setting that up at the beginning. And we had the setup at the end of last week's episode with the tendrils of the cordyceps and the clay pipe with all the roots, the dried roots there. We have Ellie saying line kind of straight from the game about talking about how Ellie and Joel's stuff is complicated, but she's still Ellie, he's still Joel, they're still who they are, and nothing's going to change that. And so you can still see that even after the kind of blow up the night before at the party, that their relationship, there's still love there. Yeah, she's kind of being a little bit of a rebellious teenager, and she's still mad at him for everything that happened at the end of the first game and everything there. But you still have those ties to the relationship and that longing, and she had wanted to go out with Joel on patrol, but Jesse says that he's already gone out with Dina, which is another key change from the game. In the game, Tommy and Joel are out on patrol, and Ellie and Dina are out by themselves. The storm does hit like it does in the show. Ellie and Dina go hunker down in an outpost because Dina was on a patrol buddy with Eugene. They hunker down at one of the places, go in the basement is where all of Eugene's marijuana and everything like that is. That's where it ties more to the romance between Ellie and Dina. They kind of connect in that basement, have a moment. It's implied they fool around, and then Jesse finds them down there because he had gone out because they hadn't heard from Joel and Tommy, and then they kind of panic and go start looking for Joel and Tommy, and everyone splits up. Now, I have mixed feelings where they decided to make Dina go with Joel. I think which will kind of, one, it motivates Dina a little more for revenge on her own, not just she's going because of Ellie. And so I think that's interesting. You have Dina, who's now this kind of not narrator, but she can relay the information about the group, where in the game Tommy's knocked out pretty quick into it, but so is Dina. And I'm torn. I'll be interested to see what they do next week. I'll get into it a little bit more with spoilers from the game towards the end about some of the changes there. But not having Ellie and Dina have the time to bond in the basement in Eugene's stash room, I'll be interested to see how that plays out. I don't know if it's going to be a sign that they're steering a little bit more away from Ellie and Dina's romance, and it's going to be more of a revenge plot on their own. I mean, Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin at the end of the episode, when they were talking, Neil says that Abby lost her dad, and it turned her into this kind of revenge-seeking person, where that's what is driven her. That was her motivation, and that now she created that in another character, in Ellie, and she kind of caused what's going to happen to them next. And so I think it's interesting to see that kind of that cycle of violence that created Joel's decision from the very beginning of what we see in season 1 of losing Sarah, and how that kind of set him off and down that path of bitterness, of kind of a little bit jaded, and then finally feeling that love for Ellie that you build throughout the first game and the first season, and then that fear of losing that again, that causes him to just go into protector, selfish, like murder mode, and take out all the fireflies at the end of season 1 because of that selfish need to protect. He doesn't care about what Ellie's wishes were, because Ellie had just kind of wanted to feel purpose. And even I finished my rewatch of season 1 this weekend in the season 1 finale, when Joel's kind of trying to talk Ellie about even going into Salt Lake City at the end. And Ellie tells Joel, she's like, we can't go all this way and have done everything that she did, because of everything that's happened a few episodes before then, the people she's killed, what she's had to do to get there, and everything she's gone through emotionally. She says, can't have done everything for nothing. And Joel kind of took that from her by taking away her usefulness and what she felt like her purpose was. He took that away from her. And so she's dealing with all of that as well. I was a little worried after last week's episode, because Ellie was a bit more like lighthearted and fun-spirited that we don't get as much in the games at this part. And so it felt almost a little more immature and not really the kind of bitter, hardened Ellie that we get in the games. And I get it's a different take, different adaptation. But I think this episode, we really saw that a bit more with the concern for Joel when he hadn't called in, having to go out and get him that. And also when Jesse and Ellie are talking about Eugene, when they're in his stash, and Jesse mentions that it was a raw deal that Joel had to put Eugene down, but he couldn't be saved. Like, what are you going to do? He couldn't be saved. And the camera kind of lingers on Ellie for a minute, and the look on her face, kind of thinking about well, he can't be saved because of me. Um, and so I think that was a real interesting dynamic that we shifted that focus as well. I'll be curious to see how it plays out with Dina being with Joel instead of Tommy being with Joel, because that's how it is in the game. Tommy and Joel are out. Dina and Ellie together. Jesse comes in afterwards. I I don't really have a ton else about the show this week's episode as it stands. I think this will go down as one of the more dramatic the final shot where we're seeing the different pieces. So we see everyone from the old Salt Lake City Firefly Squad. So Abby, Manny, Owen, Nora, and Mel walking away. You see Jesse's horse riding up to the lodge in the background, and then we cut to Tommy and Maria hugging each other in the aftermath of surviving this massive attack of infected and the breach at Jackson. And then it cuts back to Jesse and Ellie on a horse, and Dina on another one riding back towards Jackson and just dragging Joel's body wrapped in the sheet behind him, which I don't know. There was something about that to me that just made it seem a lot more brutal and disheartening in a certain regard. It just seems so, I don't know, as weird as it sounds, it seems almost so dehumanizing to see Joel just dragged behind the horse. Thought they maybe could have slung him over the back of Dina's horse. They also should have had 4 horses there, because none of the Salt Lake City crew were riding out on horses. I guess maybe they cut them loose, but there should have been Jesse's horse, Ellie's horse, Joel's horse, and Dina's horse. So I don't know why the 3 of them are on 2 horses. And I get Ellie is probably has them lacerated, internal bleeding and broken ribs from Manny's brutal kick. And we see the preview for next week's episode is Ellie waking up in a hospital as well. But I think, I don't know, for me, the ending of this episode topped anything that we had in season 1 as far as just feeling like a massive gut punch. And that's kind of what we had in season 1. The end of episode 2 was Tess dying as well. And so this one, the end of episode 2, we get Joel dying. Joel, obviously much larger figure. We've had more time to spend with him. A lot bigger impact is going to be felt from his death than Tess's. I'm glad it looks like we're not getting just to flash the promised Eugene flashback history episode next week. That would piss me off. But so it doesn't look like that's what we're getting. So I'm excited to see where the story goes. I'm excited to see what other changes they make. Again, basically to sum it up, I thought Abby and Joel's pieces were almost spot on, almost shot for the game, except for the monologue added by Abby and getting that more backstory in her interaction with Joel. We do see Mel's kind of rejection towards everything and how squeamish she is. She calls out earlier, she said we weren't going to hurt anyone else besides Joel. When Abby's talking about, well, we kidnap someone, we make them tell us where Joel is because they're taken back by how big Jackson is. And then we get where her kind of hesitation to put Dina to sleep when they take out Joel, and then you can see kind of the look on everyone's face. Well, at least Owen, Mel, and Nora. And don't think we focused on Manny, just seeing the kind of how uncomfortable they were and how kind of shocked and a little bit taken aback at how brutal Abby's being, and how feral she is just murdering Joel. Even though they know why, they know that her motives feels righteous in this and like it's deserved, and she's getting revenge and avenging her father's death because he was an unarmed man. killed by Joel. That was one of the things in the kind of speech she's giving Joel. She's like, the person who's trained me the past 5 years is you don't kill an unarmed person. And that's what you are right now, but that's what you did. She's like, my dad, the doctor, unarmed. You didn't even look at him. You didn't give it a thought before you shot him. Nurses said you didn't even look at him when you walked past his dead body. But I saw that. And kind of how that fucked her up is what she's addressing, because it was her dad, someone she loved, her protector, and just seeing him dead and finding out that the person who killed him didn't even give him a second thought. It was almost like he wasn't human, and how that set her on this path. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in the show. Bella Ramsey, they did a great job as Ellie. I think the emotion in this episode is one of the things that was going to tell me that they were right for the role in season 2. They did a great job as younger Ellie in season 1, but seeing that emotion and that maturity and that anger coming through here, that's going to be what really sells it for me. If they are truly the right casting for it. So far, I'm on board. Okay, now a few spoilers for the game, so check time codes when I'm done with these. That'll be tagged at the end. I'm curious how it's going to play out with Dina being there with Joel instead of Tommy. In the games, obviously, Tommy goes off on his own first to go to Seattle to try to hunt down Abby. And there's a few days delay in when everything's happened. And the delay makes a little more sense now. After the attack on Jackson. So it makes sense why you were delayed. They're cleaning up. They're dealing with all this shit there as well. We can't spare resources. We can't send you out. We can't have some of our strongest fighters going out there. We can't have our main protector who rallied everyone, Tommy, try to go after and get revenge for his brother. But in the games, he was there with Joel, and so he just has to go after him. And then Ellie and Dina go shortly after. I think what it most likely will play out in the show is that Tommy's kind of racked with guilt, feeling guilty that he wasn't able to be there for Joel. He wasn't able to help protect him, and he was murdered. And as far as we know right now, he doesn't know why. He just knows that he is brutally tortured and murdered. I am going to be curious, like I said earlier, how Dina and Ellie's relationship progresses if they go down the romantic relationship route. And this is the spoiler for the game section, so you already know. If Dina's pregnancy even comes into it at all, and if Mel is going to be pregnant. I kind of feel like they are going to take away the pregnant Mel angle because it makes Ellie a little bit more irredeemable in the game. And I don't think they're going to go there with the series. I don't think they're going to go that dark, partially because in the game at this point, Owen tells Abby that Mel's pregnant and Mel and Owen are a thing. I don't get that vibe in the show. I think they're keeping it that Owen and Abby are a thing, and I don't think we're going to get as much of Abby's backstory in that regard. But we'll see. I could be wrong. I do think that everything between Owen, Mel, and Abby, that kind of triangle and those dynamics at play, I think are very important to who Abby's character is in the game and some of the motivations that she feels. So I think if you change those aspects, it does change a lot of the core of Abby's almost redemption arc's not the right phrase, but her character development and growth and what makes her more of a sympathetic character. My potentially hot take or unpopular opinion is when playing the second game, I enjoy Abby's character arc and playing that portion more than Ellie's. Ellie's, we see her character kind of devolving into madness and anger a little bit more is what we see with her character. Whereas Abby is going through this, she feels like she's gotten her revenge and she's a little bit more at peace. And then going through this arc and self-reflection of caring for someone else and kind of being challenged in her ideas and her hatreds that she's been raised with. And I feel like that is a really interesting thing to explore. And so I'll be interested to see how that is done in the show. All right. That's going to do it for my spoilers for the game. And that's going to do it for this week's recap. This is a fucking heavy episode. Let us know your thoughts down below. It does look like we will be getting more Joel being cut in flashbacks because there were scenes from the trailer that we didn't see in this. So it's not the last we've seen with Pedro Pascal. I'm pretty positive and confident on that. But let's see what happens with these characters next week. It was Easter. What a hell of a way to... Hey, maybe in the spirit of Easter, they're going to really veer off from the games and Joel will be resurrected 3 days later. So maybe Joel will be back. So let's see. Let's keep that hope alive. Thank you all for tuning in. Like, comment, follow, subscribe on this week's regular episode of the podcast, released Wednesdays at 6 a.m. Central Time or midnight on podcast platforms. If you're listening on audio, we'll be at the top, either 10 or 20. I haven't decided yet how excessive I want to be with it. Top 10 or 20 musical duets. So tune into that. Have a great week. Hopefully next week's a little lighter. And don't forget to go down once more. Later.